Hey guys, before I get started on the review, I wanted to tell you about this awesome deal I just found. There's only about 20 of these left as the time of making this video, so make sure you check it out now. Now, a viewer had alerted us to this deal at Best Buy, but we found it somewhere else. Couldn't find it on Best Buy anymore. What the deal is, $999, you get the Evo, just like normal price. But you also get a bag and 2 batteries included, kind of like a Fly More package from DJI. So I just wanted to make you aware of that awesome deal. It's definitely something you don't want to pass up if you're looking to get in the Autel Evo anytime soon. Now let's get to that review. Hey guys, this is Chris. So when we wanted to talk about the image quality and the video quality of these drones, we had to pick some to choose from. We didn't want to go with everything we had, so we filtered a little bit to compare to the Evo here based on price and capabilities, which knocked out this guy, the Parrot Anafi. Nice drone, but not as capable. And we wanted to filter by size, which knocked the Typhoon H out of the competition as well. There is, of course, the Phantom 4 Pro, or Advanced in our case, but not being a folded drone, we also decided to eliminate it. So where does that leave us? That leaves us with the Mavic Pro, the Mavic Zoom, and the Mavic Air. Mavic Air, definitely smaller, definitely a little bit less capable, but also worth looking at if you're looking to stay under $1,000. That's why it kind of snuck in here with the competition with the Autel Evo. So the question is, how does the camera on the Evo stack up from a spec and a performance standpoint? We did a lot of comparisons. We used the Drone DJ test chart here. We got it up in the air, did some 4K video, did some photographs, max resolution on everything to really see if the Evo holds a place and really can stand up with these guys. So we'll be right back to take a look at full camera comparison. So why are we looking at the Autel Evo right now? Well, as you can see, had a few drones already. Didn't really want to buy another one, but we got lucky. We talked to Autel at AUVSI conference in Chicago here a month ago or so, and they luckily were willing to send us one to try out. So we're very thankful to Autel for that, and that's why we didn't really get to it. I mean, we got so much other stuff going on anyway. But finally, we have the Evo, and really the other reason is the initial firmware and reviews of this thing were kind of not that great. A lot of that had to do with the software. So all the bugs worked out for the most part. Now we're reviewing a much more polished drone. Alright, so let's jump into the camera specs. So first of all, obviously the Mavic 2 Pro jumps out for the number of pixels and the sensor size. 20 megapixels, all the others are 12. Makes a huge difference. That 1-inch sensor makes a huge difference as well. Getting in more light, much better for low light shooting, but doesn't really matter when you're outside in broad daylight. In my opinion, not as much. All these drones have the same approximate bit rate at about 100 megabits per second, which is pretty darn good. Helps you get that 4K footage in there. One important thing to note is the 2 DJI Mavic 2 drones have variable focus, meaning there's going to be some autofocus. You'll see that work, and at times you are going to want to tap the screen to engage the focus. You can also turn on continuous focus, which is semi-continuous. It will update on its own, unlike the original Mavic before it and the Phantoms, which you could lose a lot of footage with that. To some, especially less experienced users, it's actually an advantage of these guys. Fixed focus. How do they do that? Small sensor, that f2.8, the hyperfocal distance not too far, so you're able to get really everything you need to see from the air without using any autofocus. You bump up to the 1-inch sensor, or you incorporate a second degree of freedom like zoom here, and you're going to need an autofocus degree of freedom to keep everything sharp. So obviously the Mavic 2 Zoom has that wonderful little zoom camera. Key feature of the Pro is the variable aperture in addition to the 1-inch sensor. Where does that leave the Evo? What is interesting about this? I mean, this camera looks even bigger than the zoom's camera, even though it doesn't have zoom, and it does have the same size sensor. So what are they doing in there? Let's take a closer look at that. One of the key features of the Evo, not on this, huge spec improvement over both of the Mavic 2 drones, is 4K at 60 frames per second. Now, that is not particularly a huge thing for me. I hate files that big, but for some users, that's key. A lot of people like recording in 4K, and a lot of people like that higher frame rate. So you're not going to get that. A lot of people are disappointed. You want that, you're going to have to go with one of these. Oops, you can't buy these anymore, at least not from DJI.com, unless you want a little funny hat on top of it and you want to spend a lot more money for the RTK. When are we going to see the Phantom 5? I don't know. Hopefully soon. Maybe never. In any case, if you want 60 frames per second at 4K, you got the Evo. Huge bonus for this guy. Alright, let's take a look at some test shots. First up, test target here in the basement. Alright, let's start by looking at the raw images, unprocessed, totally uncorrected for relative illumination, distortion, and everything else. What you'll notice right away is the top left, the Evo, and the bottom right, the Air, actually have the least amount of distortion. Now, why do I think that is? I think it's because these two Mavic 2 drones, they're packing as much as they can into really small packages. In one case, a zoom degree of freedom for the lenses, and in the case of the Pro, you've got that 1-inch sensor packed in a nice little package here. So what does that mean? You're going to have to make some compromises. If you look at the Mavic 2 Pro in particular, you got some relative illumination issues in the RAW, and one of the more severe distortions. The zoom, very distorted barrel distortion. In wide, in Tele, it's actually pretty darn good, kind of close to the Air, very little distortion when you're zoomed in. And all that does correct in the JPEGs we'll look at in a second. Why does that matter? Well, when you have to correct stuff, you're making sacrifices. In terms of relative illumination, you might lose a little bit of dynamic range. When it comes to distortion, you're losing some resolution, particularly in the corners. Yeah, you can still say it's 12 megapixels or 20 megapixels, but at the end of the day, you're doing some interpolation and you're losing some of the clarity in the corners because of that distortion correction. That being said, I love the photos taken from this guy. They're just absolutely gorgeous. So it is hurting the image quality a little bit, but not that much. The Air and the Evo, on the other hand, you will see they do not do any distortion correction in the JPEGs. Do correct for relative illumination a little bit, but they just leave that distortion in the corners where it's at. You might notice that just a little bit looking at a horizon. So that could be an issue. Okay, so let's take a quick look at the JPEGs on the test chart. One thing I do want to note is the dynamic range has been really severely impacted on the two drones on the bottom. The zoom and the Air, I really don't like how DJI has compressed a lot of the darks, and you'll see that in the test shots outside as well. Other than that, you'll notice the Mavic 2 is actually now having the least amount of distortion, so really good distortion correction there. And I would say I'm most happy kind of with the balance and the colors on the Evo and the Mavic Pro. If you take a closer look and just crop and look at the center of these images, you can see the Mavic 2 Pro top right is just really super crisp. You really can't complain about that. Mavic 2 Zoom bottom left also looking nice and sharp. In the other two corners you got the Evo and the Air looking a little blurry, but remember these two drones don't have any kind of focus capability, so I'm probably a little bit too close to this target in order to see the entire target. So we're going to have to look outside to understand that sharpness a little bit better. Sure enough, when you look side by side at the raw images from the zoom and compare them to the Evo here, you can definitely tell a little bit of blur. But again, that's not so much an issue. Usually you're not taking a picture from 20 or 30 inches away using your drone. Alright, so let's take a look at the pictures outside. Now overall, I'm very happy with the Evo. It's nice and crisp, and really more than any of the others, it maintains a lot of that dynamic range. It almost looks maybe truest to the raw image, or kind of like an HDR image. Out of the four, shockingly, it's the only one that gets a little bit of blue and gets us some texture in the sky. So that's a really cool feature. Really happy with the JPEG quality. here coming out of the Evo. It's probably my favorite of these pictures. The Mavic 2 Pro I do also like. Again, the air and the zoom, don't like how they compress the darks, looking really contrasty, really dark in the trees there, the Mavic Air in particular. So all those pictures have the house about the same size in the photograph, and what I did is I did a massive digital crop. I blew them up, and I wanted to look at a part of the picture near the middle that had a ton of texture and things like that. What you can see is, once again, the Mavic 2, I put a little green number 1 next to it. It is the clear winner. The Autel Evo and the Mavic 2 Zoom, I'm kind of calling those a tie. The Evo looks a little bit sharper and crisper, but if you look carefully, you'll see some of that is due to their sharpening algorithm being, in my opinion, a little bit overly aggressive to try to pull out more detail. There's different preferences there. So I'm not going to really pick a winner in terms of the crispness, the sharpness of the image. I'm going to call that a tie. The Mavic Air, on the other hand, is coming in a bit of a third place. Now, to many users, these differences may be subtle. If you're not going to crop your image that much or blow it up so much, maybe not such a big deal. But in any case, Mavic Air coming in third place, and the Mavic 2 Pro, the winner, which you'd expect, 20 megapixels. It's going to have more detail. Now let's talk about the 4K video quality. Now the Evo has that 60 frames per second. All these recordings here are done at 30 frames per second. I didn't have filters on any of these drones, with the exception of the Mavic 2 Pro. The bigger sensor, I just figured let's get it maybe a little bit closer in terms of the frame rate, and I throw an ND8 from Tiffin. By the way, if you want to know about filters, I got a massive 30+ minute video on that. I cut to the short on that one, which is that I like the Tiffin filters the best, but really all the filters have subtle issues with them. But Tiffin, at the end of the day, that's the one I'm picking to fly with. But I digress. Let's take a look at these 4K videos. So in each case, I did an orbit of the house. So all of these shots are taken while the drone is in motion. I couldn't find a way to adjust the speed on the Evo, so it's actually going a little bit slower than the other ones, but with the amount of light that was out there, I don't think that's really a big issue. So let's take a close look. Again, I cropped, and here now, instead of showing 4 images for comparison, I'm looking at 6. So what I'm adding in there is the Mavic 2 Zoom in Tele, as well as the Mavic 2 Pro in what they call 4K HQ, I think, which is a cropped version, supposed to be a little higher quality. Now, if you're not aware, the Mavic 2 Pro is somewhat infamous at this point for not delivering on crispness in 4K. We know the sensor is in there, and we know the lenses are there, but why does the 4K not look that crisp? They're doing some line skipping, some pixel averaging stuff. Basically, their processor can't keep up with that 20 megapixel sensor, causing big headaches, and a bit of a little scandal at DJI in some ways, in the sense of not delivering on 4K performance. And you can see that here. You can tell this drone's been out for a while. We're not going to get any improvements. It's just fundamental to the hardware. We've had times for lots of firmware upgrades. Quality is what the quality is, and the quality does not compete with the Evo in 4K. In my opinion, both the 4K HQ and the 4K for full field of view look a little bit soft, and lots of professional users would agree. The zoom, on the other hand, looks nice and crisp in my opinion, and that's in both tele and wide, getting the most detail out of any of the drones in tele. The Air, on the other hand, again coming in 4th place among these drones. So at the end of the day, what do I think? I think I really like the Evo for 4K. It has 60 frames per second, and it's as sharp as could be. It competes really well with the zoom. Now, when we were at AUVSI, they said that the camera comes in between these two in capabilities. What exactly that meant, we're not sure. At the end of the day, it is extremely crisp. I think it might be a little bit more crisp than the Mavic 2 Zoom, but being able to zoom on this guy, I mean, that's hard to compete with. We did notice some issues with the Evo in terms of what flight mode you're in. We had a major problem. We were in standard mode and doing an orbit, and as you can see, That Orbit, not that impressive, very jerky, and we thought we were just going to have to kind of slam the drone for that. Then we put it in precision mode. I just happened to try it again, and it was nice and smooth. Now, why would an automated flight mode be sensitive to how you have it set up? I basically consider that a bug. I also noticed in standard mode, very hard to get fine motions with the sticks. I do like the remote on these guys, but enough about that. I'm here to talk about the cameras. At the end of the day, this is really a wonderful camera. You might have to do a little more color correction than you would with, let's say, the Mavic 2 Pro. But out of the box, you know, the images, the video you get from here with a little bit of correction, the crispness is there, the focus is dead on, image quality great. Low light, it's not going to hang with this guy. It's not going to hang with the zoom capabilities of this guy. But from a 4K, if 4K is your thing, you know, I think this is the drone you want. So I'll lead you guys out with this video recorded in another cool mode of the Evo, which is 240 frames a second in 720. The video quality does suffer a bit, but you can get some fun clips here at the expense of my little guy. If you like this video, make sure you check out Jack's full review of the Evo, and make sure you subscribe and check us out at halfchrome.com.